Hi everyone. Wow, that intro is really punched up from what I wrote initially. My name is Pietro. I'm one of the partners and creative director at Secret Location here in Toronto. I grew up on a farm. I love robots and fear them. That's pretty much my intro. Just a background on Secret Location. Basically, we're a collection of insane people that found each other over the love of making cool shit. And today I'm going to try to talk to you about how to make that cool shit happen. Essentially, we have three verticals at Secret Location, more officially: brand and advertising, entertainment, and original technology. And we find it's the most effective projects, and it's the space that we enjoy working in the most when these verticals overlap. And today, I'm here to talk to you about a project that we made for Sleepy Hollow for Fox. And essentially, this is a great example of where these verticals overlap: entertainment, advertising, and emerging technology. So just real quick, I wanted to go through a demo reel of our work just so you can see what types of stuff Secret Location does. Here we go again.
You're leaving behind valuable traces of information.
Drinking, playing cards. Your life has become very interesting, my friend.
So today, like I mentioned, I want to go through a case study of a project we did for Fox on Sleepy Hollow to promote their season 2 of their TV series. Great opportunity for us. It didn't start as a VR piece, but ended up as a VR execution for San Diego's Comic-Con. This is a screen grab of the experience, just to give you some background of what it ended up being. Essentially, we plop the user in a graveyard in Sleepy Hollow, and here comes Ichabod Crane, basically starting to freak you out that someone's going to come chop your head off. And then eventually he just tells you to stay where you are, and then you get your head chopped off at the end. But it was about a minute and a half of experience, and I guess what I'm responsible to tell you today is what the process was in getting there. What's the workflow for VR? That's the title of my presentation. And I'm sorry to say I didn't realize until I started putting this presentation together that there's no process. So sorry about that. You can send your hate tweets to at Pietro Gagliano. But seriously, if there was a process, logically it would look like this: A, B, and C, right? Logical steps to a logical conclusion. But the problem is when you're working with many cross-platform pieces and complicated builds, especially VR, the process really looks like this if you try to follow a logical process. And you find that the team working on it starts saying, well, I can't test the video because the shoot's not done, and the shoot's not done because the script's not done, and the script's not done because the client doesn't know what the story is, and it just becomes a big mess if you start into this like logical steps trap. So what we need is a philosophy to guide the process instead of just taking logical steps. And that's what I'd like to show you, our philosophy in doing this today. So the workflow for real that we practice at Secret Location is a little bit abstract. We do have a very complicated process, but I've tried to boil it down into a bit of a recipe here for everyone. So first of all, nothing can happen without an amazing team, and that works for any piece of work. Without collaboration, nothing is going to happen. So I'm just the guy who has the honor of presenting the project, but really it was the great team behind it at Secret Location that got the job done. And speaking of giving credit where credit is due, I want to credit my two friends, Cameron Browning and Ben Moskowitz, for inspiring elements of the process that I'm about to share with you today. For example, back in college, Cam Browning was essentially the first true creative technologist that I ever met. And that was kind of a new thing back then. I'm like 35 years old, so that was a while ago. But Cam and I started talking at a party, and it was one of those like 2 a.m. conversations. And I was like, Cam, how do I just make cool shit? I just want to make cool shit. How do I do it? And I know I was drunk. I assume Cam was drunk too, but I don't want to impersonate Cam right now. But essentially, Cam looked in my eyes and he said, all you need to make the coolest shit is 2 things: fantasy, come up with a crazy idea, and formula, how you're going to make that idea. And that was so simple. It stuck with me for basically, it will stick with me for the rest of my life. This is how I approach every project. Essentially, all you need is the idea, fantasy, and the formula, the process on how to create it. And that's it. That's really all it comes down to. And then enters Ben Moskowitz, a friend of mine from the industry. He works at Mozilla Foundation that I met at a hackathon years later. And he had this great way of boiling down ideas, and that was story, vision, and tech. These were the components of an idea that he taught me essentially at that hackathon. Now, I've since rejigged it a little bit. I call it story, form, and function, but that falls under the fantasy category. That's the idea. Those are the moving pieces to the idea. And basically, the process came from myself after, I'd say, 15 years of fucking up projects, figuring out, like, okay, well, what is the best process in doing this, and how can we avoid screw-ups? Oh, this wasn't playing yet. Okay, that's me for 15 years. And then I decided that the process that I was personally going to take was called discovery, schematics, and execution. And so for anyone, I see some people taking pictures. Take a picture of this, write it down, tweet it, yak it, whatever the kids are doing these days, Periscope it. But this is the recipe that I follow when creating work. This is all you need, and it's the recipe for definitely for the VR piece that I'm about to show you. So let's jump into fantasy, the idea. Like I said before, it's got 3 components: story, form, and function. And in my opinion, the order is important as well. You should always start with a great story, and that should be the foundation of your ideation process. And then from there, you decide what form that story will take. What does it look like? How does it feel? What does it smell like? You know, if it's an installation, what does it sound like? Is it a website? Is it an app? Is it a video game? That type of thing. And then from there, you figure out the functionality. So this is really interesting because I don't believe you should lead with the tech first. A lot of people come to us and say, like, you know, apps are hot right now, we need an app. And then we kind of want to take a step back and say, okay, well, what story are you trying to tell first? And then we'll decide if an app is the best use of that project. And I think that the best ideas are when story, form, and function the boundaries between those two items start to blur. Where, for example, a VR piece, is that the functionality? Yes. Is that the form? Yes, obviously. And does it lean on the story? Does the story get better because it's of the functionality? Yes. So these things start to blur together, and that's the sign of a good idea to me. So let's jump into the formula and the process. Now, I've got lots of examples of our case study from Sleepy Hollow that I'll walk you through, but just to get back to this little beast for a second. I have an analogy that I use to say why this is dangerous, and I always regret using it after, but I keep using it. So let's give it a try. How many people went to art school here? Yes, like a good third of the crowd. So you'll remember in art school, life drawing class or painting class. You've got a naked person in the middle of the room, and everybody's working away at drawing or painting them. And the professor at the end goes, "Okay, everyone, 10 minutes left." And the one guy who spent the whole class just drawing the boobs, like detailed boobs, panics and quickly has to do a sketch for the rest of the piece. And that's a funny looking drawing in the end. But the risk is you focus on your favorite part. You focus on the boobs, and then the rest of it falls away. And see why this analogy is so awkward? If you just focus on the boobs, you'll run out of time. And so instead of doing something like this, A, B, and C, it's really more like this, X, Y, and Z, and it's a cycle. It's a process of iterating again and again and again, doing even passes of the full piece, making sure that you're not losing any parts, making sure that they're all working together. And I call these iterations discovery, schematics, and execution. And the reason these names have been given to this iterative process is because it doesn't matter whether you're a technologist, a creative, a furniture designer, a fine artist. This process remains the same for whatever you're making, and it should be repeated until the job is done. So even if you have a 20-minute task that you have to do, you've got 20 minutes to do something, you should be still going through discovery, schematics, and execution. You see what's available, you see what's been done, you do a little bit of research, then you mock it up, you bring it to your contemporary, have a discussion with the schematics, and then if everything's good, you execute. And that is the safeguard to any task, even if it's 20 minutes. And I'm so obsessed with this that I start naming my folders that, and then I discovered that it was actually like a fractal, and then even in schematics, there was a discovery and an execution, and it just went on and on and on. So now I'm obsessed. But the process that we take at Secret Location is basically trying to do even passes of the whole thing as many times as we can before we run out of time. So let's go into the discovery process when it comes to the Sleepy Hollow VR experience. Since we were doing it for Comic-Con in San Diego, the team dug into what made a good exhibition at that conference. And what we found was the most rewarding exhibits were all experiential, and they had a piece of a takeaway that people could leave the conference with. And as part of our case study reel, obviously my talk focuses mostly on VR, but we did spend a lot of time executing a wonderful takeaway from the piece as well. It was an application that basically showed the user with their head cut off, and they could tweet it out. But you'll see that in a demo reel coming up. So since we had the concept pretty much evolved with our story, form, and function, we knew sort of the setting that we wanted this to take place in, and the form and the form that it would take. So we wanted to do some research in the TV show itself, and our art director, Steph, came to work one morning and was like, "Hey man, I watched all of Sleepy Hollow last night." He stayed up for 26 hours straight just watching the entire first season and screen grabbed the locations that we could use for our experience, doing significant amounts of research from the show itself. And we even went so far as to stalk those locations then on Google Street View and say, oh, this is a real place, here's an even better reference for it. And as part of our research and discovery phase, it didn't take much longer than watching 4 minutes of the series to know that the decapitation theme is a strong theme in the project, in the piece. So that ended up leading our story. And plus for VR, there was a lot of guillotine demos that were available for us to try. So that basically sums up our schematic or our discovery process. So let's talk about schematics. Now this is, I would say, if you could spend the majority of your time, it's in the schematics phase. It's setting up the project and fleshing it out even passes at a time. And so, speaking of starting with your favorite part, this personally was not my favorite part. The exhibition, how we were going to lay out the furniture, what the process for lineups were going to be. But it was important to do a pass at figuring this out, because if you think about it, the lineup and the length of the experience and the number of people in line had to be reverse engineered to dictate the length of the VR experience. So if we didn't start here and we had a 7-minute VR experience, then the exhibition would fall short. So while we were doing our discovery for this, we found that the Sleepy Hollow exhibit at New York Comic Con used this awesome covered bridge. So we went back to the drawing board and then revised our schematic for how the exhibit would run and put it together in this covered bridge. So now we had an idea on the way the line would work and basically the length of the VR experience. Of course, when you're dealing with television people, it's great to start with a script. You could see how this script evolved into a VR piece, but it was a great spot to start and get everybody on the same page. And likewise, just traditional storyboards was a great place to get everyone collaborating on what this experience would be. And you can see they're very rough, but it brings the whole piece together. We started to recognize quickly that this is an unconventional project in that there is no frame, so we don't really know where the user is going to be looking at any given time. So it really becomes difficult to storyboard and calculate and engineer an experience when something could be happening over here or when the user is looking over here. So we started to create these like general diagrams like this to architect the experience in the best way possible. So here's I'm going to go through a couple pro tips. So this is a way to storyboard a VR experience. And again, Steph, our art director, and Misha were working on this 360 storyboard for frameless experience. And this really changed everything because now we were able to demonstrate where the user was going to be. We could highlight a frame of reference where we wanted action to take place in. And these essentially revolved into more detailed versions of how we were going to develop the 3D environment, where we wanted points of interest to be, what the action was going to take. You can see here you've got this little Ichabod crane that's going to run behind a 3D model of a building. So it really helped to flesh the whole experience out in 3 dimensions just with this way of storyboarding. And then we bounced those storyboards back into traditional storyboards, and we were able to basically depict the ideal user experience, where we hoped the user would be looking at any given time. And you can see the little pie chart in the bottom there is a reference to the 360 storyboard. So another pro tip: don't ever get stuck. And we say this a lot at Secret Location: don't get stuck. Like I mentioned earlier, well, I can't figure out the video because the shoot hasn't happened and the script's not done. So you get stuck and you don't do anything and you run out of time. So here's an example of Steph figuring out and starting to plan how the Headless Horseman's action would be. So perfect, I'm just going to pause there. I think that's a good, perfect example of just not getting stuck. Grab your cell phone, grab some Lego, Play-Doh, pipe cleaners, whatever you need to do to flesh out the experience. Just do it right then and there. It might take you an hour, and then you've got your answers. And here's another example of Steve figuring out, coming out of a stinky washroom, figuring out whether we should CG the lantern that we were going to have the actor hold, or whether we would give him a physical lantern and then CG a light in. So this was an early test. And the washroom was stinky, apparently. And this one's my favorite. Here's our project manager, Luke, reading the lines out in a green screen test that we did.
You shouldn't be here, wherever here is. Look out behind you.
That was, Luke nailed it. And we were like, why would we even shoot Ichabod now? Because like Luke just nailed it. But once we had that shoot under our belt, we had to take the task of inserting stereoscopic video into a 3D environment. And we'd never done this before. We had some assumptions on how to do it. So at first we were like, oh man, that's so easy. You just use a video with an alpha channel, a stereo video, and you throw it in the 3D scene, and there you go. Well, that was totally wrong because at the time, and I believe we figured this out since, but at the time, Unity wasn't supporting that video alpha channel that we needed it to. So, okay, well, now that's easy. We just write an alpha cutout shader that applies the alpha directly to the video and then throw it in there and then see what happens. And essentially, this is how we went about that. There's an alpha channel and the video paired side by side, and then you have a left and right channel for that, and the alpha shader creates the alpha channel within Unity. And that was wrong again, bro, because it's too heavy. The experience just started lagging, and we hadn't even got final assets in there yet. So the solution was sprite sheets. Old school sprite sheets, which were native to Unity, and we essentially synced over 1,760 frames per eye, which was over 3,500 frames in total to get that video to play with an alpha channel within Unity. So at this point, we have an alpha build of our experience. We're seeing what works, what doesn't work, and we've got the test environment together. And it's, oh, this is a good point. Again, don't get stuck. Our developer, Josh, lead developer, built the whole thing out of assets from the Unity store, free assets. He just went and grabbed street scenes, buildings, lights, and we've got our headless horseman as a skeleton just to see what it would feel like. And at that point, we have a full experience ready to go where we could test it amongst ourselves in the company. So we took, I would say, an evening to run everybody through a line to get a sense of the timing, get some feedback. And one of the things that we discovered was that was around locking the user's point of view and whether that was a good idea or not. Because if you think about it, the head comes off your body and you don't have a body anymore. So logically you'd lock the point of view. But another pro tip, completely locking the user's view makes them barf. And that we went back and forth a lot with this one. I don't know, I never asked how many people are making VR experiences or are interested in making VR experiences. Yeah, most of the people here. So this is a big debate, moving the camera, locking the view, that type of thing. And really the only answer comes down to test it and see what works. So phase 3, let's get into the execution. So notice all this work that we've done already, and we haven't even touched the final product yet. We haven't even started into any final assets or anything. So if all of that execution phase is holding, then you move into all of the schematics phase is holding, you move into the execution phase. We had the privilege of shooting real talent from the show, Ton Meissen as Ichabod Crane on a green screen set for the final piece. And although we'd done a number of test shoots, we were still concerned with poorly positioning the camera, leading to the feeling that the actor would be just a cardboard cutout and not have that real depth. So what we did was we brought a super fancy, super expensive 3D professional camera on set with us, and we also brought in this hack job rig of 2 GoPros held together by an old hard drive case. And so obviously you're going to set to shoot an actual star with, for Fox. What looks more professional, the 3D professional camera or the hack job hard drive case? So I'm glad we shot this with both, but the reality was we ended up using the GoPro rig that we created in-house as the final shot because the GoPro was wide enough that we could position it the focal length of human eyes and then get it the actual distance away from the subject matter. So that created the best 3D effect. You can see even in the hand there on the test we did with Luke, how much more 3D his hand is using the GoPro. So, pro tip, shoot your subject matter from the same distance that you want it to appear in VR, if this is the rig that you're going with. And since then, we've created a GoPro rig with 14 cameras to do full 360 and that type of thing, but that's a whole different talk. And so this becomes a problem with actors because the camera basically is in their face, right? Like you've got this weird hard drive case like right in front of them. So luckily for us, Tom Meissen thought it looked like the adorable Johnny Five, and he was okay with it. So he was really cool. And it was actually quite a pleasure to work with Tom in this project because he really believed in the technology. And here's a clip after our experience with him.
I'd heard a lot about the Oculus Rift in this year's E3 conference. There'd been lots of revelations about it. So I was excited to know that it was coming here. I didn't realize it was quite at the level that it is already. And then when I hear that there are even more levels above it, it's an exciting thing. It's also a lot more reasonably priced than I thought it would be.
So that was brought to you by Oculus Rift, obviously. So we've got the shoot under our belt now. We bring all that footage home, and it's now time to dig into the post-production and the beta development. And this wasn't a gag. This was a real shot of these guys trying to figure out how it would break, how the footage would break in stereo. And I think they had permanent eye damage after that. Too many hours in those red and blue glasses aren't good for you. But anyways, we started building the 3D environment. And I'm showing this because we ended up creating a custom script to delete all the polygons that the user wasn't seeing because they're at a fixed focal point. Essentially, in the distance especially, they couldn't see certain polygons. So in order to have it run more efficiently, we deleted those. And we also spent a lot of time figuring out the detail. The more detail, the closer to the user, and obviously that makes sense because if you have a bunch of complexity in the background that you're never going to use, it's just going to slow down your experience. So another pro tip would be don't render or create needless detail. You'll want to put the air conditioner in the house window across the street, but maybe flattening and reducing those number of polygons is the best approach for performance, especially if you're doing it in a real-time engine like Unity. So we also got a bunch of great assets from Sleepy Hollow themselves. This was a high-resolution 3D scan of the Headless Horseman, and instead of putting that time into modeling, then we could put that time into performance. So this was really great for us to kind of figure out how he was going to move and light him properly and whatever. And obviously this was exactly what Steph predicted, like to a T. Perfect. There we go. Another thing that we had tested before but became a challenge was motion tracking and compositing in 3D. You think you know how to composite and motion track in 2D, and that's, you do that for a couple of years and it becomes easy. But then adding that element of 3D space becomes very difficult. You can see the 2 points there labeled L and R where the lantern is. We had to figure out the depth of that piece to composite the light in to make it feel realistic. So another pro tip is that compositing and motion tracking for VR is just a totally different animal than what you're used to, because if you think about it, you could spend some time in 2D working on one single frame, and there's a lot of forgiveness in that frame, right? Like I have a habit of pausing Hollywood movies and going through frame by frame to see how good it is actually frame by frame, and you can get away with a lot. But in 3D, you can't get away with anything because even 1 pixel difference between the 2 eyes will make the image buzz and it'll wreck your brain. So it's got to be very accurate, and it's a totally different animal. So now I wanted to take a moment to talk about sound design and how important that was for the final experience. It's one of those things that think that you should just add in last, but it actually really affected the storytelling. This is an overhead shot of our scene, and it had, I believe, over 24, 25 independent sounds playing at any given time. And so we went back to our 3D storyboards, or 360 storyboards, and decided on what themes of sound we're going to play for the user, so that if they looked in one direction, they would get a different theme than if they looked in another direction. So we used quadrants to design this, similar to how it would be in real life. So each quadrant had a different soundscape slightly, and it added to the immersion of the experience in total. So pro tip, push the sound design to the point of it sounding phony and then pull it back. That was our rule of thumb for this experience in particular. And also make sure that your sound designer has, and if you are a sound designer, make sure you have access to a headset and a build of the experience that you can modify on the fly. Because it's impossible it's like painting a painting without seeing the canvas, right? Like it's impossible to figure out what's going to sound real and affecting without actually being able to affect the experience itself. So at this point we had a beta, and in terms of project delivery anyways, we were at the point of beta, and we had the shoot footage in there. You can see some compositing happening, color treatment on our main character. We've got a test glow in the lantern there. We've got some near final assets and lighting and atmosphere in here, and it was time to test it again. This time we made an open invitation to friends and family to come and get their head chopped off in our office. I know this is the same picture as I had before, but it was quite different. So after many more hours and days of tweaking and finalizing the assets, let's skip ahead to bringing this down to San Diego Comic-Con. And this was a really great experience for us because it got an incredible amount of praise at that event. It was most people who did the experience, it was their foray into virtual reality, so it was awesome to see their reaction. And we even got the stars from the show to get involved and try it out. And this is a video I always show, it's my favorite one, so. Oh!
Okay.
So yeah, it's just great to, yes, a round of applause for that guy, because he's in every presentation. I don't know his name, but I love that guy. He's in every presentation that I do on this project. And probably for VR ever, I will always put this in my presentation. So, whoops, okay, so now we've got the final product, and I've got a reel here that doesn't just cover the VR, it covers the installation itself, the takeaway app, and all of the other hard work that we put into this. So I'd like to take a couple minutes just to show you the final product reel.
The Sleepy Hollow virtual reality experience is an innovative, narrative-driven fan experience that debuted at San Diego Comic-Con 2014 in support of the hit Fox series. Combining Oculus Rift technology, a custom-built app, and an atmospheric live setting, Secret Location created an immersive, one-of-a-kind installation that thrilled thousands of excited visitors and reached millions in social media. The cutting-edge VR experience utilized top-quality CGI graphics, 360-degree sound, and live-action video to deliver a gripping narrative that plunged users deep into the world of Sleepy Hollow.
Stay where you are. In the dark, in the fog, he might not detect you.
Through the magic of virtual reality, visitors found themselves in the show's spooky graveyard setting, receiving a dire warning from the main character, Ichabod Crane, moments before a hair-raising encounter with the Headless Horseman. The experience thrilled visitors and generated huge buzz at Comic-Con, as well as socially through a custom digital souvenir. To capture the experience for attendees, we built a custom mobile app that created personalized images for each visitor to the installation, creating engaging content directly out of the event. The app took visitors' photos and automatically composited them into a pre-designed backdrop from the virtual reality scene they were watching in the Oculus Rift, along with tune-in details for the second season airings. By the time the scene was over, the finished souvenir images were already on display at the event and sent to the user's email or Twitter accounts, enhancing the Impulse social pass-along. The final piece was designing the whole installation around Fox's eye-catching Sleepy Hollow Bridge for maximum exposure and participation. Over the entire production process, Secret Location worked hand-in-hand with Fox for a deeply authentic experience. We collaborated with the showrunners and writers to capture the tone of the series, resulting in an engaging narrative that is firmly grounded in the world of Sleepy Hollow. Key to this was Secret Location filming show lead Tom Meisen's original performance in live-action 3D and incorporating it into the virtual environment for a totally unique fan experience. In fact, this was the first time live-action and CG animation had been combined in virtual reality for a television series or a film project. The Sleepy Hollow virtual reality experience offered something new and thrilling and received a massive response from fans and the media. Over 4 days at Comic-Con, thousands of people took part, including cast members from the show, creating millions of media impressions online and socially, enabling a totally unique experience for a legion of loyal fans.
There he is. Oh, thank you very much. So when I asked the question, who's interested in VR, who wants to make VR, who is, who's making it right now, the big question is what's next, because this is an emerging industry, obviously, that we're heading into. And at Secret Location, we've done a couple more VR projects, everything from live sports to a piece for Frontline. We just launched one for the new Insidious movie as well. Very scary. But the big question that keeps coming up is, virtual reality, is it going to replace reality? We don't even need reality anymore, right? Like, we can just stay in virtual reality. And to me, I don't think that that's really the case, but, I might look at this talk like 10 years from now and say that I was wrong, or maybe virtual reality goes away and I'll feel really like an idiot, so sorry, future self. But I think that our job as makers for this industry is not to replace reality, but transcend it. In other words, it should be like a good matte painting where it shows you what your eye can't see, or it should take you to places where you can't otherwise go and transcend our human body. And it's important right now to remember that hardware and peripheral advancements are happening every day. Just go on Kickstarter every day, and there's a different treadmill or a different, application for virtual reality coming out. And this is going to happen faster and faster and faster. Even, retinal projections will be in our near future, I suspect. And with VR headset potential in every home, we have to assume that it's Facebook and Samsung and Sony's goal to get one of these into everybody's hands. And once that happens, once the hardware is in every home, imagine the impact on things like education as an industry. Now, children don't have to just read about ancient Egypt. They can go there. They can take turns being pharaoh, see how that plays out for them. Science and medicine, obviously, will be affected in huge ways. Incredible potential to make, simulations and that type of thing. Health and rehabilitation is already being affected by this industry. This is a piece that I think it's called Diplopia, and it could actually replace surgery for people with lazy eyes. And it's already an application of VR showing that it's changing the way people are looking at rehabilitation. Architectural and the industrial engineering industry will never be the same. Virtual reality has this ability to show scale that nothing else can do. And obviously, social standards will start adapting and changing as we go. The reason I have this up is because remember when Google Glass came out, the term glass hole followed shortly after. Like people were wearing it in restaurants and that type of thing. So VR will have the same complications when it comes to social standards. Business and commerce will change immediately, I believe. The reason I put this up here is because this brilliant hacker sewed his own image together with multiple Kinect cameras and had himself in virtual reality. And I think that basically you're looking at the future of a boardroom here. And obviously there's a huge mainstream VR potential as a viable commercial product. So in that sense, business and commerce will never be the same. And of course, the thing that affects us the most at Secret Location and gets us the most excited is the potential of how it will change the entertainment industry and how these stories are being told. It's not just going to be for video games, it's also going to be pure entertainment. So my last pro tip for today is just to make cool shit. Because we in this room have a responsibility to make the best quality product for this industry for it to be adapted and used widely. And in case you didn't get this picture before, take it now. Here's your formula. I'd love to talk to anyone about this. I know it's a bit abstract, but I firmly believe that this is the formula to make cool shit. And at Secret Location, we have an unofficial practice of this mantra. It's not written on the wall or anything, but it's from Pixar's John Lasseter, and it says that the art challenges the technology, and the technology inspires the art. In other words, creativity and technology are in this perpetual dance that are always informing and challenging one another. And that was a quote from John Lasseter, but I, on the other hand, truly believe that science fiction impregnates reality, and I believe that's a fact. Just like space travel was depicted as early as 1865, credit cards in 1888, video chatting in 1889, in vitro fertilization in 1924, so too was immersive virtual reality depicted by Arthur C. Clarke as early as 1956. So I believe that to understand the future today, all we need to do is embrace the imaginations of the present. And so some quick reading references before I finish up today. I would say read science fiction, Ready Player One. Has anyone read it? Yeah, it's awesome. It's going to be a movie, so maybe don't read it and just wait for the movie. But if you're into books, read this one. It's a good one. It's written by this guy, Ernest Cline, and he's wearing sandals and sitting on a DeLorean, so I totally trust his vision of the future. And this one, it's more science fact, I would say. It's more of a prediction of the future by the great Ray Kurzweil. And anyone who knows Ray Kurzweil's view of virtual reality anyways, it's that he believes that nanobots have the potential, well, nanobots are his thing, right? So he believes that they have the potential of going into our bloodstream, taking over our systems, and replacing real reality with virtual reality. To which I say, holy shit, nanobots? Really? Like, that's where this is going? That's incredible and terrifying. But it's clear that that these new technologies have only one limit, and it's the imagination of today. And as a creative person, I truly believe that this is the most exciting time to be alive. So thank you very much for listening today. I think I've got a couple minutes for questions if anyone. I don't know if there's any questions, but I'm happy to take them now, or you can come up here. Yep. Yes. So, oh boy. So this is why I love and fear robots so much, because it represents all of the potential of humanity as people, as a species that is creating technology, the singularities coming in the future. You know, I won't get into it, but it's got all this potential that could be so wonderful, and it's also super terrifying. So robots are the thing that I love most and inspire me and fear most in my life as well. So I hope that sums up the excitement of why it's so exciting to be alive right now. Yep, in the middle. Yes, so to answer your first question, we don't have a specific software set. All of our motionographers at secret locations sort of have their own toolkit. For Sleepy Hollow, it was heavy in Blender and heavy in After Effects. Actually, our director of motionography created this really interesting lens in Blender that allows him to export out baked down stereoscopic 3D 360 images. So that's worked really well for us. Plus it's free and it's a vibrant community. And to answer your second question, yes, I think that, you know, because Oculus Rift was first to market, and in no way do I want to diss that product, it's a matter of them wanting to be this Ferrari of the industry. And I think that Samsung Gear in particular is a good device to target for VR experiences because it's more accessible. If you think about sharing these experiences with clients anyways, I would much rather put them on a Samsung Gear and mail it to them so that they can experience it, or have them download an app rather than you know, the not portability of the Oculus Rift and a massive Alienware computer and that type of thing. So yes, Samsung Gear is definitely part of the conversation now, and we have to decide before we start a project what our target device is and how we export to Google Cardboard, how we export to Oculus Rift. It's a whole matter of interactivity and whether it's linear or nonlinear experience to me, but yeah, I think that's another talk as well. Thanks for the question. Anyone else? I can't see. I think we're, oh, yeah. So it was made in Unity, but for the motion side of things, it was heavy into Blender and After Effects. And yeah, I can't think of anything else that would be a major component, but those were probably the biggest pieces of software for this piece. Yep, in the back. That's an awesome question. So it's sort of interrelated to the Samsung Gear versus Oculus Rift question as well. It totally depends on the input device and the power of the device that's playing the experience. So if you have an ability to do real-time, open world stuff, obviously your options currently, and this is why you should check Kickstarter every day because something new is coming out, but you've got Leap, what is it called? Leap Motion. Man, I'm embarrassed that I forgot. Leap Motion, hand tracking, that's obviously going to become something that's huge. Eye tracking will become a thing in the future. But right now we're experimenting with just deviceless interactivity where just looking at something should be able to trigger interactivity. So we call them eye overs right now instead of mouse overs, where that will give you a little focus ring and engage to further content. So that's an open world now as well. Exactly, yeah. And that has to be a real-time, nonlinear experience to do that. It can't just be a baked-down video, but that's a huge discussion when you're planning these experiences to begin with, is that target device and the amount of interactivity, and the input device. We try to avoid just putting a game controller in someone's hand and being like, okay, here you go, now walk around, because it's not that immersive. So the more you can just use your physical body to interact with, the better, I would say. No problem. Yep. Absolutely. I think I've seen it a couple times where I put someone into a virtual reality experience that we've made, and it's their first time in virtual reality, and unless you prep them for it, they come out of it saying basically like, oh man, I let myself get way too deep. and they're just like at the end, like, get this thing off my face right now, right? Which to me was a mind-blowing experience, and to other people might be disorienting. But as the hardware gets more convincing, I think that we won't encounter that problem. Okay, great. I think I got my 0-minute warning. So thanks, everyone.